Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Friday again, another WordPress Friday Hangout. Half of your co-host team, Brad Williams, joined as always with Mr. Victor Ramirez. Victor, what is happening on this nice Friday, the last Friday
I'm
of March?
I'm just I just woke up. My dog's favorite cafe closed, so there might be a very boisterous dog begging to join the call. But I'm excited to be hanging out with all my WordPress friends, and hopefully it's more than just me and Brad. So getting some people in here today.
Yeah,
It is our first WordPress Friday on a YouTube live stream, not on Twitter Spaces. This is our fourth one. I'm actually pretty happy about that, and we get to have it's kind of like a Twitter Space today. So hopefully we get some people to jump in and have a conversation about what's up in WordPress.
yeah, we got some fun topics to talk about. If you want to pop on the show, shoot us a DM on Twitter or wherever you might be able to ping us, and we'll try to get you on here.
While
Our
you
plan is
still
to do
can,
these
while you
open
still
shows.
can.
Yeah, while you still can. We plan to do these open shows usually the last show of the month. So, if you miss one, you want to pop on one later on, just remember last Friday of the month will most likely be the open shows. We'll get people on, talk about whatever topics you want to talk about. Of course, we'll bring some what's going on in the WordPress world. And if you remember last week, I was actually in sunny Phoenix at WordCamp Phoenix, our first live boots on the ground show, right? And I think it turned out pretty good. I was pretty impressed with the playback and the audio and the setup, and I think it went well. What do you think, Victor?
I think when I rewatched it, I was actually stunned how well it went. I think that next time we should definitely have the mics if both of us can be there. I'm going to be at WordCamp Europe. Hopefully, you can join me at WordCamp Europe. We'll have two microphones, but it was neat. It was so cool because not once was there really like a break. At one point, saw because I was for everyone, I was home with FOMO, watching Brad enjoy sunny Phoenix in 40-degree weather. But while that was going on, only did the screen go black once. We didn't lose audio. There were no drops. There was
Yeah.
no stuttering. So it's really like, I think it shows like how cool the compression technology is, but also I wonder if in municipality where you were in Arizona, like Phoenix, or where I am in Philadelphia,
Hmm.
people are getting their internet together. Because I was explaining to someone the other day, I remember when Game of Thrones was first on HBO Go. It wasn't HBO Max. There was no HBO Other. It was HBO Go. And everyone would be like, I'm going to try to watch Game of Thrones Sunday, but the internet's probably going to go out. And the internet would go out. It would just go right. Like everyone just agreed on Sunday nights, like, hey, we're going to try to watch this show, and it would die. And so we outdid 2006 Game of Thrones. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point because, obviously anytime you're at an event, a conference, Wi-Fi is one of those big question marks. Like usually it's good enough to, at the very least, to be on Twitter and, social and stuff like that. But like live streaming and doing any type of video, you never quite know, right? Because if it's not good enough, it's not going to really work. So a little bit of a gamble, but it paid off. You're right. It worked. I thought the audio was really good. We had some really cool conversations with people. And I mean, I think it kind of sets the stage for us to do this at future WordCamp. So I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe Europe, maybe WordCamp US, maybe Montclair. There's all sorts of options. Maybe Philly if it shows up again. But that's fun.
And
It's
my
fun to be on the ground, talk to people in real time as an event's going on.
Yeah, my brother was in Vegas just recently for a conference related to his industry, which is work in place and like design. And it was funny because he ended up having he couldn't even text me. And I was like, aren't you in Vegas? Isn't it like the conference center of the universe? And he was like, yeah, I cannot get even iMessage in this conference center. I was really stunned about that.
Mm.
And so yeah, so thinking on that, and the Suns, weren't they playing a big game next door?
There's a lot going on. Like the Suns were playing actually the Sixers, the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday night. And then Friday night,
I
there's a
should have
really
known
big
that.
there was a big concert at the same venue there. So there was it was pretty busy in Phoenix. There's a lot going on. All the hotels were booked up and pretty active nightlife. People are going nuts. I must be getting old because I'm pretty tame. I think one night I was in bed by like 9. I really leaned into the jet lag. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed.
Yeah,
But
just like no, yeah, done.
yeah, but also just getting back into events is kind of exhausting too, because the idea of just like doing what we're doing for like all day long, back to back days, just talking shop and WordPress and meeting new people and what are you up to and what kind of stuff are you doing? It's tiring, I'm just not as used to it as I used to be. And I think it's similar to a lot of people. We haven't been going to events and been in groups like this, most of us, or at least not regularly, since the pandemic started. So I think just kind of getting back in the swing of things and getting out there and communicating, talking, but also still having some downtime to reset, recharge those batteries a little bit is important, right?
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, for you especially, I've had it happen a couple times. You wrote the plugin book on WordPress, right? That's how we became friends. I knew who you were. I slid into your DMs. I was like, "Yo, let's like work together," right?
See what happens? You
And
slide in my DMs, we end up posting a
yeah,
podcast together. It's just that
yeah.
simple.
But but what's so funny though is it is kind of also, and I had this conversation with Brian Gardner. Sometimes when you go to these conferences, and Brian Gardner from Studio Press Genesis, now WP Engine, um, once you start getting some traction and giving a lot to the community, it can get a little stressful where you just want to sit at a Starbucks and zone out, right? And you can't do that when so many people want to say hi, and it's flattering, and like even like people want to speak to you. And that's the one thing I've when I did WordCamp Montclair, a lot of people wanted to talk to me, and I just didn't feel like I had the emotional or motivational battery to answer every question. So I had to kind of give myself, I set like a timer on my Fitbit for 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'll get in as many as I can. And then I got to roll because I could feel my battery draining. I hadn't had, people come. And whereas before the pandemic, I love nothing more than hanging in the hallway for an hour and answering everyone's questions, trading links. It was fun. But yeah, your battery, it's just different now.
It is. And that's exactly right. Like just plan ahead a little bit. Like I've been going to conferences for a long time. So I know it's hard to have, like, if you're trying to have a really serious conversation, like a partnership meeting, or maybe even an interview with somebody, and the opportunity's there because you're together, you can't do that in the event space. You have to like get away because you're right. It's hard. You want to be open. You want people to feel comfortable coming up to you. But if you're trying to have like a serious conversation, just, remove yourself, go to a coffee shop, go somewhere else. And that way you don't have to worry about other people coming up and having to like kind of tell them, you're in the middle of something. So, or just to get away and recharge your batteries. Like many times I'll skip out on lunch and go with a smaller group of people to a local place, eat, it's smaller, get to hang out with just a few people, get to try some of the local food that's not conference food and just get away for a little bit, so just got to plan ahead a little bit based on, who, how you are. And if you need that recharge time, some people don't. Just talking to people recharges them, right? But that's not me. It drains me over time. So, but it was fun, man. It was great to get back out there and see everybody.
We have some interesting people in the chat today, by the way. We have Adam Warner. We have Michelle Frechette.
Yeah.
Michelle, I hope I said that right. I forgot. I've never had to say your name aloud, and now I wonder if I said it. Frechette, correct. But yeah.
Adam and Michelle were both at Phoenix. Yeah. Like chance to hang out and talk with both of them. Yeah, I mean, Michelle's a rock star at this point. Like, I feel a little bit intimidated around her. I'm kidding, Michelle, but you are a rock star. I mean, you got to see the presence she brings. And I heard her presentation was amazing. I didn't get a chance to watch it live, but that's one of the things we talked about last week, which is, don't feel guilty if you miss some presentations because everything's recorded at these events now. So, make the ones you can make. But if you're having a really good conversation in the hallway, or a really good, chat with a sponsor or whoever, keep it going. Don't feel like you have to cut out to go see a presentation because it is recorded. So I got a long list of presentations I want to go back and watch from Phoenix once they're posted because I only heard great things about everything up on stage.
I will say I must have like some kind of jinx on me because I spoke at WordCamp Phoenix right before the pandemic. It was a packed room. Actually, I'd never had standing room only talk. It was really cool. I felt like I was like, damn, I feel like a rock star. It was really
and that was like 2 weeks, but that was like one of those ones that was really close to lockdown was Phoenix.
Yeah. And
Phoenix and Miami. Yep.
Yeah, and you know what happened? They didn't get the audio. And so the talk just couldn't get me the video.
You need the audio, yeah, of course.
and it was honestly, it was great because Dave Ryan had gotten everyone to use the brand slides. And like they had these branded digital like video game slides, and I really leaned into it, and they looked so good. I put my code in like video game, like typography. It felt so much fun. And then the same thing happened WordCamp Montclair. I gave a great talk about data analytics and like how privacy first, and the importance of analytics. And I get a message from Laura and Mike apologizing, like, "Hey, yours is one of the talks that didn't get recorded. They forgot to put a tape in." I was like, oh my God. I was like, what? So they're not always recorded.
Then you start to question yourself, like, did I say something wrong? Did they not record it for some specific reason? But
can I take shots at that again or something? I don't know.
we're all in technology, right? So we all know it can fail from time to
Yeah,
time, and
I'm
it's
just jinxed.
you're jinxed. So if you don't speak before or after Victor or anywhere near him,
Yeah,
you may not get a recording. But
yeah.
that's actually a good tip, is if that recording, if your presentation is very important, make sure you have someone also in the audience, maybe holding a camera or something too, or
That's
set
my
up
new
your own
pledge.
tripod.
Put a
And
little, yep, just a little
yeah,
background tape. Yep.
absolutely. I see people do that from time to time, and I think it's genius. They have their own copy of it. They can do whatever they want. It's them, and then they're not necessarily relying on the final one, but they most likely will still get the final one too. So,
I think I
but yeah,
got
good
spoiled. If
tip.
you guys saw Madrid, I think I got so spoiled because Madrid, they did such a good job. They had like a 3-camera setup. When it's edited, if you look my WordCamp Madrid talk up, it has like swipes and like
Oh
at one
man,
point, like it's just my face being tracked, but the slides are being shown. It looks like I'm
that's great.
speaking at some big TED talk. And so then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Not everyone, these Madrid guys, they know how to throw down. I love WordCamp Madrid. I would speak there every year if I could. It was so cool.
Yeah, and I love when they have the more kind of professional setup. But there's a cost to it, right? Because there's,
Mhm.
by and large, most work camps are paying someone to help with recordings at this point. Maybe not all of them, but
Yeah.
certainly most of them are paying a company. So you're going to get that little bit more professional feel with it, and more likely you're going to get a proper copy of it with audio and what you'd expect, right? If it's the
Yeah.
pros, the volunteers. I mean, I've been at WordCamp Philly. We early on had the hardest time with video, and then one year I just made the decision we're not going to record anything. You know what? It's a huge pain. It's all volunteers. We don't have the equipment's not where it needs to be. We're really fumbling, and I was like, let's just get rid of it and enjoy the presentations for what they are, and there will be no recording. And we made that really clear. I don't think anyone's doing that anymore, but I definitely get the value of recording. But it can be frustrating when it really, especially when it falls on the volunteers, because it's a lot to put on volunteers to make sure that gets done correctly every single time for every presentation.
Well, almost I
So
feel like maybe not recording it is going to be what gets people to. I mean, I don't know if we had that problem with WordCamps. It seems like they've been pretty well attended. But the big conversation right now is return to office. And I saw that Eric Adams, he's like wants
mhm.
all businesses to get together to set mandatory minimums. And nowhere in it is he saying the logic of why we have to come in, right? And I was going to say, oh, maybe we don't record it to get people to show up. But I think people like the hallway track and seeing each other so much. I don't think WordPress has that problem as much as an office does, right? We're like, so I was to say, but if you don't record it, it does make it more like, oh wow, this is like I have to be there to see it, and that's an exciting thing. But
Yeah.
maybe only record specific talks, only certain rooms, because that I've seen that also certain places will record like the main room,
Hmm.
excuse me, and the side rooms all workshops and there's no recording.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into some topics. Switching gears a little bit. Big topic that's out there right now in WordPress is the new version just released, 6.2. Breaking
Yep.
news. Yesterday it dropped, one day behind the schedule, which is impressive that it's even that close to the scheduled release date. Only off by one day. But WordPress 6.2 came out, named Dolphy. I think I'm saying that right. Dolphy.
Yep.
Named in
Dolphin.
honor of American jazz alto saxophonist, bass clarinetist, and flautist Eric Allen Dolphy Jr. The first of three major releases planned in this year, 2023. Over 900 enhancements and bug fixes, with a really strong focus on improving the site editing experience. So, have you checked out any of the release candidates, or even 6.2 since it's been released?
I played with 6.2 yesterday.
What do you think?
I I
What
still
are
don't
your
like it.
initial thoughts?
I still don't like full site editing. It's still confusing to me. Like it's still
Mm.
because I tried playing with WooCommerce with it, right? And then and recently I am playing with just for other projects. I'm playing with BB Press and Buddy Press, and checking the viability of that, because a lot of people want to jump out of Twitter. They're getting nervous about Facebook groups, like no one's using Facebook anymore. So and as I was using it and trying to use it with BB Press and um, Buddy Press, and I know it doesn't work with those, right? And I know everyone's gonna say, oh, it doesn't work with that. I know that because I'm in WordPress. My brother, who's my client, who I'm working with to integrate it, doesn't know that. So when he's seeing full site editing and he's seeing all this, he's so confused. He is so confused with WordPress right now, right? And so like I feel like that's my like I don't that and that's where I was using the full site editing and I was like, when am I supposed to use this? And I only need to do it when I first set up the site. So that's where I'm still like kind of struggling to understand. Like and that leads into the conversation we were talking about
Mm.
earlier before we got on the call. Like who's this for, right? Like when is it?
Yep.
And it actually made me think about, there's another product that I use that is completely outside of WordPress, but it is an analytics dashboard. And we realized we had to make a context button so that the product manager, the engineer, the data engineer, the data analyst, and the business people all get a different view depending on how they log in, right? Whereas full site editing, everyone gets the same view. And that's where I was like, oh my God, I don't want to give my version of what I think is happening, but like, we don't use user roles in WordPress enough where we say, hey, like if you want design mode, it looks like everyone's in everything mode all the time. And so it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the primary core features of this release is the revamped site editor interface,
Yeah.
and officially bringing the site editor out of beta, and bringing it into a more polished product. I kicked the tires a little bit on some of the release candidates, and I was playing around with 6.2 after it dropped yesterday. And I mean, we've talked about the site editor and full site editing and some of the challenges, especially in larger companies or enterprise space, of keeping design changes, in the database, and tracking those changes, and how important that is. But, I think it's definitely improving, which is good to see, but you're right, it's still a little bit confusing. Like, I think, just playing around with the new editor with templates and template parts. I mean, to us, it kind of makes some sense, right? But I'm just thinking of like someone that knows nothing about websites, right? In your trick, because that's the goal, right? If this is full site editing, drag and drop, the goal I would imagine is to be that the lowest common denominator, which should be able to build a website, right? Someone that's not technical, that's not a developer, that could basically click and drag and build a website. But then you get into templates and it's like, okay, 404, maybe they know what that is, probably not. Like archive. What does archive mean to anybody? We know what archive means, or index. I know what index means. You know what index means, but an index template, would a normal average Joe have any clue what that means?
I think the problem,
or a blog
yeah.
alternative. Like, it's just like, I feel like the terminology, while it means stuff to people who have been building with WordPress for a long time, like if we were to sit,
yeah.
someone in front of this has never used WordPress and say, explain these templates to me. What is it? What do you think this means? I would be shocked if half the people would be able to fumble through these things because, how do they know what these things mean?
And that's one of the hardest things we have when I work with, I work with a very specific select clients that I like to work with and I get excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I've noticed, and these are smart guys, like I'm not, smart guys and like smart people, because this one team I worked with, I worked with this enterprise organization. They're heavily funded by Microsoft and, et cetera. And the editors they got, this woman was from like Fortune magazine. Her editor was she was from like another like these big publications, right? And when I brought them and we got them into Gutenberg, because remember, coming from the journal and working with you at Dow Jones, like I have the reputation for knowing how to set up Gutenberg. So it was for a marketing company, right? And the one thing that really I noticed, they were trying to get away from unbounce. They said, you don't need to pay, $40,000 a year for an unbounce. We're going to make a landing page CPT called promotions. We're going to give a specific route. We'll add the ability to do custom slugs, et cetera, right? But when it came to using the editor, and I didn't realize, they're like, what's an archive? I just need a list of posts. Oh my God, no one calls it archive outside of WordPress. It should be called post and then post list page. And I'm not saying it should be called that, but we need to have this, we never have that discussion, right? And we do, and I changed that. Actually, the first thing I do on all sites when I work with clients is we go through and we say, what do you call this? And we have an engineering version and we have the client version, right? And then the other thing is, and I didn't know this, and I was actually, my little brother, I had to gas him on it because we went to the same school, and our school had, and we were very lucky, had a web entry course where everyone had to learn HTML and understand. And at this time, I'm 39, so I think they were teaching us because they wanted us to know the future of libraries. We use HTML. And that's very cool. So I give my little brother the editor, and he goes, "What's this H1 to 6? Which one's large? Which one's small?" And I was like, "Oh my God, dude! Like, this is important because, and think about this. Anyone who works in SEO, anyone who works in accessibility, H1 through H6 is the definition of hierarchical content, right?" And so my brother's so going in and adding an H1 and making it small when it's not the most important thing on the page. And so I almost feel
I
like,
think 6 is bigger just because
it's
a bigger number. And that's probably what most people would think.
Right. And the thing is, I think the thing is WordPress people, and this is a compliment to the WordPress community, we are also web native. right? We're always trying the new tools. We're always trying to do things. But my brother, he's not a dummy. This guy, he like worked for Google, Netflix,
Right.
Dropbox, Atlassian, like smart guy, but they don't have the time to be web native anymore, right? I think we're
Yeah.
very blessed that we have the time to tinker and play. He's got, 2 kids and like other stuff going on. So, I mean, I know people hear of kids, but I'm saying everyone has priorities, right? And so for him he wants to dive in, and that marketing team, we had the same thing where we had to change a lot of the strings that were default in WordPress. We didn't call it post archive, it was called post list page. We didn't, and then, and all that kind of stuff. And it was so interesting to see that. And I think in WordPress, maybe we need to start thinking about that. Like, stop. It's okay to because if I know what would happen if we were to say, hey, rename post archive to post list page. Everyone in WordPress in our little circle would go, rabble, rabble, rabble. I'm so confused. This is so confusing. Rabble, rabble, rabble. But if WordPress is about, market share and growing the community, I think we need to have that conversation and say, we are confusing the hell out of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, and maybe that's in discussion. I'm not in those core chats, but I agree. Like, a template's called single. Like, I know what that means.
What's a single?
You know what
Right.
that means, but nobody else, unless you're building websites with WordPress, you don't know. Single means nothing, right? So,
Yeah.
I think the direction they're going is interesting. I still find the editor extremely clunky. But again, it's an iteration, right? Each release is going to improve it. You look at where Gutenberg was when it was first released, and it was very much like alpha software in WordPress core. And we didn't touch it for a year or two at web dev because of that, right? Like, we would tinker with it and kind of learn about it, but we weren't doing it for client sites because it's just such a moving target. But now it's a much more polished and a pretty good experience all around, right? So, it doesn't mean I expect full site editor to continue to get better. I do think things like terminology and stuff are one of those things that just many times get glossed over. We have the same issue in core, or within the code, right? Where quick decisions are made on function names or something, and then it's completely changed very quickly because, that didn't make sense. But now you have this legacy code, like featured images in WordPress. All the code under the hood, it talks about thumbnails, because they didn't figure out we should call it featured image until after they'd already built the feature and shipped it. And it's like, I feel like some more thought needs to be put into terminology and language as we're developing, not as an afterthought and after it's released and realize, people are very confused. And I think a lot of this could be just, I guess, seeing the forest through the trees, right? When you're too close to something, sometimes it may not be as obvious. I don't know, but it's better. But man, I couldn't sit someone in front of this that has that I think could figure out a drag and drop website builder and expect them to build something. I think they're going to end up in a very bad spot. And they're going to be looking for help, so we'll see. It's definitely, it's only the second release for the full site editor and core. So it's got, it's improving, but there's some work to do. There's some other updates. Another big one that kind of caught my eye is actually in the updated block inserter with the media tab and Openverse integration. So now when you go to insert, media within your website, it actually integrates the Openverse initiative. I mean, I guess, is that what we're calling it? But basically there's 700 million creative works that are available, under the Creative Commons license, or in a public domain. So it's essentially giving you this massive library of media that you could incorporate into your content, with the proper licensing to do so. So I think that's a pretty big integration there. And that's a pretty big, I guess, helper tool, whatever you want to say, that they're bringing to help people get more interesting content out there and not have to worry as much about the licensing around it.
I will say the updated media library, that was like the most, because I remember, what was it? I mean, how long ago did we work together, Brad? Like 5-6 years ago. Now, like, I feel like at Dow Jones, the media library is so poorly documented and built in Backbone. So I feel like now, with the new media library, and I forget which version, when they added this and made it easier to incorporate things like the Openverse and external images, etc., that now makes it, I think the Openverse shows that you can bring in so many libraries. There's a cool plugin called Instant Images, and Instant Images, I put that on every demo site, and it allows you to pull from Unsplash, Openverse, Instant Images, all of those. So I think that's just great. It just shows that, like, hey, people don't, need to do all this work. And the other benefit of not, for some sites, that I do for friends, I actually disabled the ability to upload images, because I'm like, hey, do you need to upload anything? And they're like, no. I'm like, I honestly feel like it's better if you just stick to like these stock images, and it takes care of Openverse, takes care of licensing, it adds the alt tags, it adds
Yep.
all that you need, and it kind of and this goes back, I think Adams said, like, let's talk about, you focus on UI UX. I think the image library is a great example because it takes away the thinking for them. Hey, you don't need to remember alt tags, you don't need to remember to optimize, you don't need to remember add the size, it's all done for you. And that's where the image, I think the media library shows that. If you install instant images, same with Unsplash. I had clients taking 5,000 pixel, 5 megabyte images and dropping them on sites, and then, oh, my site's so slow, what happened? I'm like, well, they're like, you told me to
that
use
50
Unsplash.
megabyte movie that loads
Yeah.
on every page, or 100
And so
megabyte, whatever.
right. And so I just strictly disabled the ability for them to just copy paste from Unsplash. And then so they had to use the inserter, and that's where I think that shows a great, okay, we've abstracted away the logic of add the alt tag, add this thing. And that's a great experience for the user. Like, wow, this is so good. Like, my images, my site's so fast. I have these great images. They look great. They're they're retina ready, and all these things that you used to have to think about when you upload an image. Now you just type in person eating a snack, and I'm like, boom, person eating a snack, credited to some photographer, done, alt images, your site's ready. And that is a great experience. And I think that maybe we should focus more on stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of, especially amateurs, hobbyists, bloggers, writers, whatever, they don't really think about licensing on images. I'm just as guilty. 10 plus years ago, I would just go to Google Images, search for a picture and take it and drop it into a blog post.
Yep.
And then, down the road, you start getting these emails about, hey, you're using my image, you need to pay attributes. And then it gets a little scary, especially as a hobbyist, just doing something for fun, not really making money at it. And all of a sudden, I'm getting these threatening emails. And that was kind of a pretty big lesson learned, that careful about what you're using out there, because there are pretty sophisticated tools that scour the internet and look for specific images that are licensed. And there are companies, law firms, that all they do is go after people using, images that have a license, and to get the money, and they try to get a quick payday, give us $1,000 and we'll let you use it on that one post, or give us 10 grand, you know what I mean? But so it's not just a matter of people out there clicking around and maybe they stumble on it. Like, there's systems, bots crawling the web looking for images like that so that they can come after you. So it's important that even on the personal use side, you're making sure the licensing around the images and content are allowed for you to do that.
But again, that's an opportunity for developers, because I worked with a very large publisher, and one of their issues was that robo lawyers were sending them 10 different bills a day of $5,000 each for images that they had already paid for, but the license had expired, and they didn't have the, okay, let's go fix this. And so in their image inserter, we added that when they would add from, let's say, a Getty or one of these image libraries, it would get the date and set a default expiration date for the image, and then a default, like, hey, this image would be available, and then it would say the alt text of the image and the original image of, if you wanted to Google it, right? And so it's like the user experiences like that. Now, I don't think we could do that for WordPress, but that also, Courtney brought up a good, and this is an interesting one. Courtney, to let you know why I disable the default Openverse and use instant images for any sites I work with clients, is because of what you just said. Openverse hot links. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with like the
restate the question, then maybe explain what we're talking about
here.
Oh, sorry. When you say hot linking, like, what's the concern?
Oh, sorry. Being hot linked, there seems to be pros and cons for it. And so what I think Courtney's referring to is, in the media library in WordPress 6.2, when you add an Openverse image, by default, it adds a hot link. I personally do not agree with that. Attribution to an alt text is enough. And you can run into issues with like botnets, like all these different things. Like, I don't agree with hot linking unless there's a no follow or some kind of tags on there that are directing, to not, because also I wonder, is that then and I don't want to point fingers at anyone, whoever's controlling the Openverse, are they trying to create a backlink net to level up the Openverse? You could argue that as an SEO strategy, right? But then the other problem with that is, if everyone starts creating crap sites, or heaven forbid, someone makes an AI to spin up WordPress sites that just churn out garbage all day, and they use Openverse, then the Openverse is going to get tanked by all those bad backlinks. So it's bad. It could be bad for both parties. So it's better just not to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the default is it does bring in that hot link by default if you use an Openverse image. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Courtney,
Yeah, I
did I
mean, it's
answer your
well, something to
question?
look at if you're going to use
Yeah.
Openverse. Make sure you're clear of what it's doing and that you're comfortable with
Yeah.
that. I do like the idea of getting that more in the front of face, especially of more amateurs. Like I said, not non-commercial or professionals, because I feel like they know what they're doing. It's the hobbyists that are like, I just want to start a food blog, and then they're ripping off pictures from Rachel Ray, and they're next thing you know, they're getting a cease and desist letter, right? So those are the ones that concern me, and I'm hoping things like this Openverse integration make it a little bit easier for them to find what they're looking for and not have to worry about, any kind of lawyers come knocking. So
Yeah.
a lot of other improvements. I mean, across 6.2, a lot of PHP 8 compatibility updates, obviously a lot of bug fixes, just a lot. So definitely check it out. You can go to wordpress.org, download it, test it out on your sites, get your sites updated when you're ready. My rule of thumb is, for me, usually when there's a major release like a 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, I'll usually wait a couple weeks. I'm not in a rush, right? Because most likely within about 2 to 4 weeks there will be a 6.2.1, and that's when I like to update, when that first point release comes out that fixes some of the bugs that shipped with 6.2. So but as always, test before you update. And now the 6.2 is out the door, and the site editor is officially considered non-beta and is officially production ready. One of the other items on the next phase of the Gutenberg project is,
Phase three.
Phase 3,
Phase
which
three.
is the big kind
Phase
of
three.
marquee feature, is real-time
Phase three.
collaboration coming to WordPress.
Phase 3.
I think
You
you're
cut
lagging
out
a
for
little bit, Victor.
oh, one of
Are we
us
back?
is.
There we go.
We're back. We're good. Yeah.
Little bug there, but yeah. So real-time collaboration is coming to WordPress as part of the Gutenberg Phase 3. So think Google Docs, right? You can have multiple people in there kind of editing at the same time. You see their changes in real time. That is what they're looking to bring to WordPress. There's some plugins out there. There's some, code out there on GitHub that has done this. But getting something to the core is going to be a much bigger lift that just works for everybody. So the question I have for you, Victor, and anybody listening, is, when you're writing like a big piece of content, and you're collaborating, are you doing that in WordPress, or are you using something like Google Docs?
I guess it varies. Like most of the time, if I'm in WordPress, I'm the one doing the input, right? So it's like I've already written the content or talked about the content in like a Google Sheet or a Google Doc, and then I'm drafting the content in Word. Like, it depends on the team that I'm with, or what project I'm on, or what I'm. If I'm editing a marketing page, it's me actively editing my own marketing page. Or if we're doing it for a client, right? The client has already done it in like spreadsheets or in like Google Documents. So I'm not using, I don't think I know anyone really using WordPress collaboratively. They're working elsewhere collaboratively and then coming into WordPress. Unless it's someone, and this is where, like, when I work with publishers, we use something like a Publish Press or Edit Flow to create a custom publishing workflow. And it's not that they're editing at the same time. It's that they're just like, hey, I'm in SEO mode. I'm going to put SEO in now. SEO has been approved. Now we're going to move to publication and distribution. And those are the phases for like a publishing company, right? But there's no real-time collaboration at all in most processes for WordPress that I work in.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on my side, and whenever we're working on a post or something for the blog, and it's a collaborative effort, it's 100% always in Google Docs, because you can comment, you can see revisions, you can see edits, you can work on it in real time together. Way easier. And then when we get it in a better spot, then we bring it over to WordPress and Gutenberg and start crafting the actual post itself. But I'm excited about this, because this is something I know I would use, and I know my company would use, if it's done right and it's reliable, which I expect it to be once it's ready. So I think it's a big lift, though. You can imagine just thinking about the technicalities that go into real-time editing, making sure you're not overwriting each other's content. What happens if you're trying to edit the same line, the same image, the collision detection? Like, what is WordPress going to do? So it just opens up a lot of questions that are all, things that can be figured out. It's going to take some work, and it's definitely going to be, I think, one of the bigger technical challenges WordPress has had in a while, maybe since even Gutenberg. But I'm
I think
excited
what's
because it's a
exciting is to
biggie.
think outside of just editing. Because, like, if I hear like, okay, well, like, we're going to edit a blog post together, To me, that sounds kind of boring because like maybe if it was like a blog post of like review the top 10 editors, the top 10
Don't say page builders.
no, the top 10 seltzers, the top 10 seltzers and why we love them, right? And something like that, right? Okay, hey Victor, you're doing these 5 seltzers. I have these 5 seltzers. Why
Mhm.
bother in Google Docs? We can edit. That's kind of boring to me because, like, what is the value add that, and why is WordPress going to build that, maintain it? And again, but this is what it does excite me. I'm starting to use Figma a lot more, and I noticed like, so at our organization, even as a data analyst, I'm an analytics manager, but I work with data analysts, all different data people. The value of FigJam now, we were using Whimsical, some people were using Lucidchart, whatever. Lucidchart is close to Figma, but the benefit of Figma is if I learn to design in Figma, but then I can also use FigJam, Figma has an API where it can connect, right? And so I can then use that Figma API to read data architecture and different spreadsheets I might have. And so with WordPress, if the editor or this new collaborative editor has an API, it would be really great to see like, hey, this page has been updated. This person did this move. This person did this thing. Because the same way in Figma, I can see that. And Figma has versioning. And so, there's obviously going to have to be versioning built into this because that is like the technical lift of what collaboration is. It's controlling different versions and merging them on the fly as people are working. That's like, as an engineer, that's how it works. And that's what people may not understand why it's not easy to do. Because if there's 20 people editing and they're in 20 different changes, which one's right? And, all in the timestamps, time, whatever.
That's
and
the challenge is that whole who
that
wins
kind of
when
stuff.
there's collisions or you start to overwrite like.
And then what are they on? And by the way, are we even talking about this? WordPress is not cloud software. I mean, well, it is cloud software, right? But like, is someone working locally and then are they pushing? Because there's people who doing, those kind of things. How do you account for a database push in the middle of an edit, right? And or an update or a backup or sharding and all that kind of stuff. Not sharding, by the way, sharding with a D. And
with a D.
Sharding,
It's very different than with a T.
Very, very different. It's one that you don't mind doing. But now think about this. How cool would it be to be working on something in Figma, right? We have a landing page template, and that's our design system, right? But then I have those elements that are, I'm editing the content in my WordPress editor and we're collaboratively working. And then the API can be updating that content into Figma. And that's like exciting for me because now there's going to be real time knowing when it's being updated. And then also think about this. Why are we building landing pages collaboratively in Figma? We now have FSE with collaborative editing. And it would be so great to get, like, I see marketers would go crazy for this. Hey, marketing team, instead of being in Unbounce and working in Photoshop, we have full site editing. They're not going to call it that, but we have the editor in WordPress and we have all of our elements as patterns. And I could sell that. Like, I know I could sell that to startups and like clients that I work with and be like, hey, here's your super duper landing page builder. And, and you could collaboratively work in it and they would just throw out Figma. And so I think that's a really cool opportunity of this feature. But then it's like, who's it? And I think, Brad, we were talking about this earlier. I'm excited about it because I can specifically think about who it's for. But who else is it for, right? Like, do people like small businesses really care about collaboratively editing when they're a business of one?
Well, I think that, and that kind of leads into the next topic I want to talk about, which is exactly that. And I feel like we've been kind of touching on it with everything we just said, but who is WordPress for now? As a, it's a big question, right? And this really stems from a Reddit post. If you're not familiar, there's a subreddit. There's a WordPress subreddit, of course. But I created this has actually been over 10 years now. I created a pro WordPress subreddit. Pro WordPress, get it? But the goal of this subreddit is more technical. It's less about how do I log in and more about like, hey, how do I solve this weird, technical problem? But there's a great a thread on there kind of asking that question, like, who is WordPress for now? And a really interesting discussion of comments. I linked it up in the chat, so definitely check it out if you haven't seen this. But this user DMJE, I don't know their actual name, kind of talks about, a little bit of the history of WordPress and talks about the Gutenberg rollout and how everyone kind of waited for it to get a little more polished. And now many people are using it now and building on it. And then it talks about full site editing and FSE, and then that starts to beg the question, like, who is the target audience for WordPress and who are we building for at this point? Like, who are we building full site editing for? And some of the comments were pretty good. I thought it was a really interesting and healthy discussion, but who is WordPress for? You know what I mean? Like, full site editing. Are we just trying to compete with Squarespace and Wix and forget the enterprise? Are we trying to, cater too much to everybody? What do you think, Victor? Who is WordPress for nowadays, or who are we trying to make it for?
And that's, I mean, WordPress is for us, and that's what's very interesting. I didn't realize the power of being a WordPresser until, and I guess I'll embarrass I love my coworkers, right? But I'm the only person that can do everyone's jobs at my jobs whenever I go there. And it's because I have React engineers who don't understand databases. I have database engineers who don't understand HTML. I have marketers who don't understand SEO. I have SEOs who, and whereas a WordPress person, you're dipping into all of this, right? And that's us, and that's what I was saying before, WordPress people are very special, right? We're very web native. If I think WordPress could be for all those people, it could be for the marketer, but I think if they went in there, they're like, why do I have this FSE? Why do I have invites to events in my dashboard? And I don't mean to mock WordPress, that is for the community, but as like, if I were a marketer and I'm like, I'm going to make a landing page thing with WordPress. Now I have like event, invites, and I think that's great, but now I have like plugins to add, and I added this plugin, it did that. And and then think as an engineer. And I know there's now, and just for everyone, I did see this. I haven't really gotten a chance to look. I noticed now a developer advocate blog on WordPress.org that is being rolled out and built more for, more pro WordPress people. Well, is WordPress for engineers? Well, I don't know, because if I were a new engineer, if I wasn't Victor Ramirez knowing Brad Williams, right, I would hate WordPress, because I would go, oh my God, they could do whatever they want. They can install plugins. They can do this stuff. And so the first thing I do when I have young engineers come to me and say, I'm trying to make some money with WordPress, can you help me out? I just run them through capabilities. I give them a capabilities manager. I'm like, once you do that, you now have control again. And then I show them how to do, and so, but that is like, there's no default capability manager into WordPress. So as an engineer, WordPress scares the crap out of me. And I think WordPress is for everyone a little bit, but it needs to pull back some stuff to kind of give. I almost wonder if when people install WordPress or download WordPress, it's like, hey, what default, are you an engineer? Great. And it downloads a version where it's like, here's this. And are you a marketer? And it downloads a version that has maybe a pre-configured theme.json.
They're, Drupal used to do that, and they probably still do. And I think they called them installation profiles. And I remember, talking about that like 10 years ago, thinking, this is what WordPress should do. Like right when you set it up, like what it should be asking a couple questions, right? Like, hey, is this an e-commerce site? Yes. Okay. Would you like to install WooCommerce and have us pre-configure, with some dummy data, a store for you? Great. Yeah, here we go. Or are you just a hobbyist blogger? You want us to structure your website like a blog with your most recent post at the top? Yes, I do. Because I tweeted, I don't know, a while back, but it was, I would encourage anyone, set up a fresh install of WordPress, brand new, local host, whatever, fresh install, 6.2 install, and then look at the front end on the fresh install. And it is not good. And I understand it's a full site editor and you can tweak it and you can make it pretty, but just imagine being brand new to WordPress and you're so excited you get that fresh install done. And then you go look at the homepage and it looks broken. It's all white, with black text, and then some weird bright green call to action button and a hello world post. And it just looks broke, and that is what they're seeing when they first install WordPress. If this is my first, time setting WordPress up, I'd probably run for the hills. I'd probably at that point walk away and say, I don't know what to do.
At one point, I remember when underscores first came out, like the underscores framework, which if everyone's not aware, it's a theme boilerplate maintained by the WordPress Foundation. When that first came out, it was very confusing, and it was confusing for me too, because I was learning to develop with WordPress, and I was like, wait, what do I do here? Like, why is it just all like, there's no sizing, there's not like default, like, okay, with 100%. It almost is, and this is, once I started to learn to teach engineering, normalized.css makes everything look normal across. A reset, you have to start from scratch. So I will say to people, let's start with normalized, which I would argue is like starting with Bootstrap versus starting from scratch. There's no documentation on that in underscores originally. And then underscores ended up remembering, I don't know if you remember, Brad, they made a generator where you could download components for underscores, and it had default components such as like a 3-column marketing thing, a something. And it had that. And so Richard Tabor's Merlin solves this. I don't look this up while we're talking about this.
Yeah, look it up.
Yeah, it's this kind of default content. And I think as a community, and don't worry, I would love, hey, WordPress, like, if someone gave me like a boy, hey, Victor, can you volunteer? Because I don't have a lot of time to volunteer lately, but if you're like, hey, can you volunteer? Or like, let's get people together, make a fake marketing copy for a site. Hey, I mean, I'm not advocating for this because it just got banned in Italy. So we're going to see how that works out. But hey, use ChatGPT to generate a bunch of bogus marketing content and make it like a pre-deployed version, Richard
Yeah, it
Table.
looks like Rich's Merlin project is a better way to onboard. It looks like it improves the onboarding experience of WordPress themes. Yeah, I'll have to dig into this. I actually have not seen this, but this does sound interesting. I mean, that's
2018.
exactly right. Like, again, if the goal of WordPress right now is to focus on kind of competing in a Wix and Squarespace world, like set up a new account on Wix or Squarespace and look at where, that process of getting your website going, and then do the same for WordPress. And it's not even comparable. Now, WordPress.com, I'm sure, is much more comparable, but WordPress, self-hosted, self-install, is not. And I think that's why if we're trying to compete in that space, then the default install and the default look needs to be so obvious of what it's doing and so clear on what it is, that it makes no mistake. Hey, it's a website. Hey, I can go in here, because many people, if you put them in front of a website that has content and is structured about what they want, and say, okay, now make some tweaks to however you want, they'll probably be able to tweak. Like, okay, I know how to edit this page. I see content. I don't like that content. Let me edit it. I see the title. Let me change it. Maybe this image I want to move up or down or whatever. Pick a different image. They'll figure that out. But if you give them a blank page and say, all right, now do something, that's when they're like, whoa, wait a minute. What should I do? I don't know what to do. Template parts. What do I, so like at least give them a really solid default state that they can start hacking away on. Even if it's just dummy content that they could blow away with one click. Give them something. It kind of reminds me of the premium theme marketplace years ago, when the demo of the premium theme would look amazing, right? And then you buy it and you install it and it looks like crap because you don't have all that content set up. You don't have it all configured. And so people would immediately be like, I don't know what to do. Give me a refund. And theme shops started realizing that. And now they said, hey, we can install it with the default state, dummy content all set up if you want, or you can do it yourself. But that way you're at least giving them, on the install, we can make it look just like the demo for you. And that was a massive change where, they didn't miss out on a lot of sales. So
on that, I'm at the point now when we take clients, we actually will scope the contract to be base, all the features that they want, and then content entry. And we literally try to get them to cancel the content entry because I don't want to do it. Because the content entry, they're always like, oh yeah, when we said we had a couple word changes, it's always word changes. Like, why do you want us to do that? You can do it yourself, right? If this is a good site. And so I did put in the chat, there's 2 websites that I did, collectivewp.com, that's my brother, and SAINTL, it's this Social Accountability International. Both of those sites were built in 2 weeks. All we did gave them was their own custom patterns, and we gave them Richard Tabor's an expanded version of Richard Tabor's block unit test, and it had all their patterns as a reference. So all they had to do was keep that one page open, and they're going do, and they built those sites out. They don't talk, and most of our tickets are just like, hey, we want the block to do this, we want this to do that, and we disable a lot in the editor. People have heard me say this, but I'll also say, and I want to say this is, I almost got in like a shouting match with my little brother because he wanted that. He's working, and I can only speak a little bit about this. They're getting investment for their startup. And so he's like, yeah, we want a scope for an engineer. And it's like a $250,000 a year. And I was like, all right, first of all, as your brother, if you hire an engineer for $250,000, we're not going to talk for a while. And he was like, why? I'm like, because first of all, you don't need $250,000 in engineering. And he's like, well, I don't, but my investors say it costs $250,000 to build a marketplace and all this stuff. And I said, look, man, I'm going to show you something. I started spinning up BB Press, Buddy Press, putting all these things together. And there was a recent conversation where people were saying, oh, BB Press and Buddy Press aren't great and like they're not powerful. You want to know why they think they're not powerful, Brad? And it kind of stunned me and blew my mind. Most people still do not understand WordPress PHP templating. Unless you know how to edit PHP templates, that's why most BB Press sites look like crap, because you don't have someone like my guys, because my team and Brad, anyone that has worked with me knows the people that I train, like they're sharp engineers. They all know Tailwind, they all know PHP templating, HTML. It's basic to me. And again, I know everyone seems basic. So we're building these, we're literally cloning Circle And it seems Buddy Boss has done this, right? So, and again, we don't want to add another dependency, so we're not going with Buddy Boss, but we're using, Buddy Press with BB Press and just with some basic HTML. Now imagine what I had explained to my brother was, I was like, look, you got a landing page module system in here that's unbounced. That's 36,000 a year you just saved. We gave you Buddy Press and we gave you BB Press. He doesn't even know, he doesn't care what it's called, but we showed the demo functionality. We demoed all the pages. That is now, you're not paying Circle or Kajabi. That's 20,000 a year saving. You are now also, we're going to give you newsletter glue. We're going to we're getting one of those email newsletter things set up for him, and we're integrating with Active Campaign and WP Fusion. At cost, again, I don't want to talk about like what I charge or what because you give your brother a discount, but like what I charge other people. Total cost to me software probably was $1,000. Total time for my engineering team, 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks of planning and help my brother understand things like I was explaining before. It's not post archive, we call it post single list, whatever, renaming a lot of things to make a better user experience. And I probably gave my brother, which was $250,000 in engineering. And I said, I think we're going to have to not lie to your investors, but tell your investors that, yeah, this took 8 weeks because they literally, or this took 80 weeks instead of 8, because they can't wrap their head around it. When they saw the demo, they were like, okay, but is this functional? Okay, but does it scale? Okay,
so,
and my brother,
and this is when you're unfortunately working with people that just don't understand technology or don't fully understand what's available to do certain things.
He had an engineer say, but can we trust it? And I was like, oh my, I go, put him on the phone with me. I'll light him up. And I did, because I was like, listen, dude, I don't mean to be a jerk, but like, you know who I am? And I don't like doing that.
You know who I am? Have you heard of the WordPress Friday Hangout?
No, yeah, but no, like if you check my credentials at News Corp, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not like News Corp, Blue Apron, but you get these tech bros who think they know better than WordPress. And hear it from me first, WordPress is effing awesome, and you can't do any of that with any other software in 4 weeks. WordPress is amazing.
I do love chatting with a lot of IT teams come with similar stances about WordPress, and can you trust it? Like,
oh my god,
like I don't know, Microsoft trusts it, the White House trusts it. Like,
listen, Node, and anyone on the call who wants a talking point to get people to shut up about thinking WordPress is insecure. Node, which banks use and everyone uses, there was a Node module called kick, right? And that Node module, they didn't file any kind of trademark or anything, but it was some kind of like, I forget how they got the copyright or the trademark or one of those, whatever legal holding of the name. Kik, the messenger, KIK, sued them or did some kind of thing. And then the Node Foundation was like, hey, buddy, for the Node Foundation, can you kind of just like rename this to something else and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And the guy was like, I'm not going to do it on screen, but he was like, double birds. Like, I don't care what you got to say. Pulled the package and took down the banking industry for like 2 hours until people figured out how to pass package. So you're going to tell me that Chase Bank is using a Node package that some stoner in Berlin sitting in the basement coding in his mom's house can take down the banking industry, and you're going to tell me that like Brad and I and all these people that work on WordPress don't know what we're doing? Come on. Node is like, WordPress is exactly the same. That's my favorite story.
What's that meme where it's like the world's like largest banking software and everything rely on this one, exactly what you said, this one package, this one library that's been maintained by this single developer for the past 10 plus years, that's in their parents' basement, and like the whole infrastructure is dependent on that thing working, which is pretty wild. But a couple of good comments in our chat here. So Courtney mentioned GoDaddy's managed WordPress hosting plans do offer either a default install of WordPress or a more customized experience with like dummy content and images. And then, Tom mentioned the WP Engine Pattern Manager, which was just released on WordPress.org, I believe, within the past week or so, a couple weeks. It's also helping, squash that out. So it's interesting that the hosting companies are the ones kind of building the solutions to some of the problems that we've mentioned, which is great to see, right? Because you got to assume if you're a beginner and your first forte with WordPress, you're probably not spinning up your own, Linode, site, server, whatever, AWS. You're probably going to use a host, right? You're going to use a GoDaddy. You're going to use a WP Engine. You're going to use somebody that's out there as your hosting solution. And so if they can give you a better experience onboarding in WordPress, then that helps all of us, right? So I do think WordPress needs to get some more of this into core, but I like seeing some of the things the hosts are doing to help with that. Well, we're coming up on time yet. So what some last throwouts here. We'll talk about what's coming up next week. Anything exciting going on, Victor, in your week here? Anything you want to throw out?
We do have our VIP bunch of WordPress nerds hanging out next Tuesday. I'm going to be seeing Brad in person. We'll get a selfie and put it up for the next call. We're going to see some of my WordPress friends. And then, no, that's it. I'm just going to be enjoying the weather. Today's going to be 65 degrees. I'm walking my dog and going for like a long coffee. I will say an exciting thing. Michelle has said there's a contest to design a WordPress website in 15 minutes. That sounds exciting. I might do that and record my screen because I could do it in 5 minutes.
I want to see how far your website, how good it looks after 15 minutes, Victor.
Oh,
I'm thinking like, could I even build a good look? We've talked about this. The problem with full site editing too is you have to know how things look good, right? Like I can integrate APIs all day long, but if you say, here's a blank screen, make it look pretty, I'm going to like freeze with terror and just be like, I have no idea what to do.
The way I do it is import prototype content and then you style. That's the problem. People style and design at the same time. I put all my prototype content, let it look like crap. And then with FSE editing and Tailwind, we just
get in there and make it look good.
Well, because you know that I've told you, like we have to get together. Web Dev Studios, we by default now remove the default patterns, add our own custom pattern library, which we forked from Twentig. So no matter what styles, all the patterns get automatically styled based on your style config in theme.json. So yeah, I'm loving the FSA features as a developer, but I also know how to turn it all off.
Awesome. That is good show today.
Yeah,
a lot of good topics. Like I said, we definitely plan on doing more open shows. Probably the last week of the month, we'll get some more people in here. There's a lot of spring break going on. In fact,
Cammy, Tom, Michelle, we'd love to have you all on here at the end of April.
Yeah,
we'd love to have you guys talking.
Hi.
Yeah,
bring some topics. We'll dig in.
Bring your own coffee.
Always a fun time when there's a group of us chatting. And I'm sure people get tired of just me and Victor, but this is fun, man. It was a good talk.
I never get tired of you, buddy. I never get tired of you. You're my bestie.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it. So we're back next week, of course, Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, live on the show. And next week,
the fans need Zeus. Hold on a second. Keep going. I'm gonna grab Zeus.
We got a Zeus thing. So next week, we're going to be digging into Shopify versus WooCommerce. Talking about kind of the differences, we talked about WordPress and who are we competing with. Well, there might be some similarities with WooCommerce and who we're competing with. So there he is, the Zeus.
We just woke him up.
The smallest dog with the biggest name.
He's ready to go to sleep. Look at him. He's like, put me back in bed.
He's like, say full site editor one more time, dude.
He said to smell my breath. Dog. He loves coffee.
That is a cute dog. Where's my cat? Get my cat in here, Raph. He's a big chunk.
Your cat's scared. I never got to say hi. Your cat, when I was over there, he was like, I don't like people. Bye. Or he was scared
one of
Zeus.
Them's like that. The other one's very much a people person.
Zeus loves your backyard.
He's one of he might be the only dog that's been in my backyard, actually. Well, since we've been here.
He's a special boy.
But anyways, let's wrap it up. For Victor, I'm Brad Williams. You can find us. Check out the hashtag WP Friday. If you got an interesting topic, comment about the show, throw it on there. We'll talk about it. Join the chat room if you can when we're live, and hopefully we'll see you on a future show. With that, have a great, safe weekend. Enjoy the hopefully good weather. Spring's coming. Baseball's back, baby. The Phillies are
Phillies!
Last in their division. So, yay.
Last night was wild. Yep. Later.
Classic. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Peace out.